Yeah, at the beginning of this conversation, I had a couple of questions, but now I threw it out of whack. I not lost my train of thought, but this last conversation about freedom and all that stuff, I think the United States government has been too involved in concentrating in the Middle East for whatever reason, that is forgetting the Caribbean and Central and South America, which is also suffering with communism and dictatorships, who are against the United States, who should be considered a threat to the United States, and yet we're looking the other way and letting a lot of stuff happen which is going to be detrimental to the United States eventually. And why are we so forgetful about what's happening in the South and forget about everything else?
I think you're absolutely right. We do spend, obviously, look, a lot of the press coverage is to the Middle East for obvious reasons, because that's where the bulk of the war is, obviously. However, we do sometimes forget that our own hemisphere. Look, I happen to be a strong proponent, for example, of a couple things, of making sure that we help our democratic allies, our neighbors to the south and to the Caribbean, that we do everything we can to get closer to them. And one of the ways that we can do that, by the way, is, for example, with free trade agreements. We did pass the Peru Free Trade Agreement, which I think was very important. We have passed a couple of those previously in the past. For some reason, the Colombia Free Trade Agreement, which I think is essential, Colombia is a huge trading partner of the United States. Obviously, those of us in Florida know that. It's a huge trading partner of the United States. It's a huge ally. It is on the front line to this thug who I guess some people call president, but he's more of a dictator, Hugo Chavez. The government of President Uribe wants to have closer ties with the United States. It would help our economy. For some reason, I don't know why, Congress, the House in particular, has a major problem in bringing that trade agreement forward. I have been pushing real hard. As a matter of fact, I've organized a number of meetings, and we're trying to continue to pressure the Speaker she said that she was going to bring that forward, committed that to the administration, has not done so. I think it's very, very important. There's also the trade agreement with Panama, which always has some issues, but I think is also important that it's brought forward, that we can discuss it, we can debate it, because we cannot forget the democracies in our hemisphere. They are subject to a lot of challenges. You've got Hugo Chavez out there with all the money in the world because of the cost of the price of oil, and he's spending it in some pretty nasty ways. You have that terrorist dictatorship, the state sponsor of terrorism, just 90 miles away from the shores of the United States. I think some good things are happening there, by the way, in the bill, in the omnibus bill that we passed yesterday. We have a fivefold increase in the funds that the United States will be spending to help the internal opposition, the families of the political prisoners, and again, the real opposition, the democratic opposition within the island. So we're doing some good things, but I agree with you. We sometimes don't emphasize our own hemisphere as much as we do other areas because the fact that it's not in the news as much as the Middle East doesn't mean that we shouldn't emphasize the Middle East. We need to, but we obviously need to emphasize this hemisphere. And there are some specific things that we can do. We've done some good things, but we obviously need to do a lot more than we're doing right now. So again, I agree with you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the sponsor of this sent to Congress. We saw just a few weeks ago what happened in Colombia, where the Colombian military and that democratically elected government freed a number of hostages, including Americans that had been held hostage for over 5 years. If there's ever been a time when U.S. aid has been used effectively, we saw it just a few days ago. It is time. It is time that this Congress stop criticizing the democratically elected government of Colombia, stop criticizing the Colombian people, and start putting the blame where the blame needs to be, and that is those murderous FARC. The Colombian government is doing a incredible job, a wonderful job, fighting those narco-terrorist thug murderers. They're doing it with our help. It's great that we're finally going to commend them, and I hope that this is just the first step. I hope we pass a free trade deal with Colombia because they deserve it. The democracy in Colombia deserves it, and we cannot turn our back. And I hope we also Stop that cut from
Time has
Plan
expired.
Colombia that reduces the funding to the government of Colombia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.